So I just got back from the test drive and I realized I never filmed an intro for this. I don't think I did. And I think I may have said it in a part of the video earlier. The suspension's been about a year in the making. I've been able to drive the car. It hadn't been that bad, but it still rubs when I put people in the back seat. And due to my job and home life and all that good stuff, it's just been way too busy for me to get out here and mess with it. Finally had a chance to get the spacers put back in there. I put taller springs in the back and the spacers, and now it seems like it's doing pretty good. The only thing I haven't done is put somebody in the back seat yet. So I got to pick my son up from school in a little bit. I'll put him in the back seat and see how it does. Other than that, man, I'm pretty much done messing with this thing unless I absolutely have to as far as the suspension goes. If you watch my drive shaft video, I said that the brakes were going to be next, but I wanted to go ahead and get this wrapped up because the brakes aren't that bad. So I'll do the brakes next time I'm, on my next days off. So please like, comment, subscribe, all that crap that everybody says. Got the car jacked up, and there's oil all over this shock and strut assembly. It looks like it's coming apart up there, so that could be why it sits an extra 3/8 inch lower. And I don't know if it picked it up on camera, but there's a little bit of a clunk in all the sloppiness. So everything definitely does need to be replaced. I'm glad I bought all those parts. I got updates. This thing is definitely blown out. Oil everywhere. And that mount looks like it's pretty well crapped out. As I'm compressing the spring, all the bearings just came apart. Trying to get the bearing on, and while I was putting it on the strut, the whole thing just came apart. Now I gotta clean all these balls. Okay, got both the lower control arms out on the driver's side, and the rear one didn't look too bad, but it was starting to get a little worn. But all the play I had was coming from this one. It was pretty well shot. It's starting to crack. I don't know if it's coming through on the camera, but it was getting a little sloppy. I felt some looseness in the front end. So looking at the boxes, it doesn't say what side is left or right, but if you look at the control arm itself, it'll tell you left and right. I'm going to go ahead and replace the sway bar end links as well. As you can see, the old one is pretty well blown out. The new ones from Moog are greasable. And the other day when I was under the car, the passenger side didn't even have an end link. The previous owner of this car should not be around vehicles. Over here on the passenger side, let me get you in here. Once again, took the inner fender liner out and let the computer just rub on the tire. One more reason the previous owner of this car should not be around vehicles. This is my first time working on struts, so I don't know if this is exactly right, but from all the research I've done, this little notch here is supposed to be facing toward the engine for the mount to be in the proper orientation, and they have it facing toward the outside. So that could be the reason why it rides like shit, and these mounts don't seem to be in very good shape. So when I put it back together, I'll be facing that notch toward the engine, which is what all the research I've done seems to indicate. Oh, and the top nut to get it out of the car was so messed up, I had to take the cutoff wheel and slice that up a little bit just so I could put some vice grips on it so that I could turn the other nut to be able to get it off because it was somewhat seized. And the top was already stripped out. So, finally got that off. Alright, here we have it. New sway bar end link. New lower control arms. New struts. Eibach springs. Now, if you notice, that looks like it's a little caved in. And let's see if it picks up on camera. It might be too dark. But the bottom looks like it was bottomed out pretty good or possibly slightly wrecked. And I don't know if that's the reason or if it's just the passenger side, but it seemed like the arms were a lot harder to get in on this side than it was the other side. But let's get the wheels put on and see how this thing rides. This is what I'm dealing with. So screwed up, so collapsed. I didn't even have to use a spring compressor to get it off. Because the rear of the car settled so much more than the front, and it is tearing up my tires. Got these spacers from Ace Performance. They go between the spring and the body, and a cheap knockoff Amazon fender roller kit. See if we can get this shit straightened out. Alright, so hopefully I can finally finish up the suspension today. That gap right there is a little bit bigger than what it was. I had taken it apart the other day to get the bolt out so I could go match it up. And now it's sitting a little bit higher than what it was, but normally that tire is almost tucking. So, got some longer bolts. So if you get the Moog sway bar end links for your G8, just know that the back side has a square nut that fits an 18mm wrench. However, you can't get an 18mm wrench back there with this bracket. So here's what we got. I had to modify my new wrench to be able to get it to work. And got that spacer in there. Wasn't too bad getting it back in. So also got the longer bolts. 60mm long, may have been a little long. If you can find them in 55, that might be a little bit better, but you know, it doesn't hurt to have more threads. So next, we're going to roll the fenders. See if we can get all this taken care of. See how much it rubbed when the previous owner had it. He never took care of that. So, but I think this right here, oh, sun's my, I think this lip right here is doing the most damage to the tire. So if I have to, I may just get the old grinder out, zip off that corner, and then roll it back a little bit more. But I think that's what's doing the majority of the damage. And then you got these sharp spots up here. So hopefully we'll get rid of all this when we roll the fender and stop chewing up the sidewall. Turns out the holes on this thing aren't even big enough to fit the studs. So before I can get started, I have to go drill all these out. Didn't even make it out of the driveway. So in the future, make sure you roll the fenders completely before trying to do anything. I'm a little disappointed because online I see these people running these wide ass tires. Everything's clears, but apparently they're not telling the whole story on what they had to do to get those to clear. Found this pipe in the garage, wedged it up in there, rolled it around. Hopefully I got most of that lip rolled back. Let's try for a second test drive. Alright, so this video has been about a year in the making. Gone through a few different changes on the rear suspension. Still can't seem to get it up high enough to keep it from rubbing. So the spacers have been on here before. I took them off and put a taller spring. Once everything settled, ended up settling right back to where it was pretty much. So now I'm going to add the spacers back. It drives fine if it's just me and somebody in the front seat, but I can't put anybody in the back seat of the car. That's when the tires really rub the worst. So put these back in and see if that gives me enough lift to not rub this outer lip here. I've already rolled the fenders a little bit. So if this doesn't work, then I will have to go ahead and spend the money on wheels with a different offset. I was trying to keep from doing that. But let's see how this goes. I'm not going to make y'all watch me disassemble it again, so I'll be back after I get it put in and take it for a test drive. Sitting in the car, the back feels a lot higher than just a 1/2 inch. But like I said, after driving for a little bit, it should settle down some. And we'll do some running around, put a few miles on it. When I get back to the house, we'll see how much it squatted. Alright, so did the test drive, went and picked up the boy from school. Sure enough, the suspension settled quite a bit, but not so much that it left a huge gap. That half inch spacer was just enough. Now that the suspension's finally wrapped up on this, I can start on some other stuff. Maybe next time I'll do the brakes, which is what I originally planned for today, but wanted to finish up that suspension first.